If you want to thrive in work, life, and faith, and are wondering how other women are doing it, then this is for you. Welcome to How She Does It. This is a show where we pull back the curtains and share real life and real hope based on stories and experiences from real women. Welcome. My name is Marva Smith. I'm your host. I'm a work and life strategist, work life coach, and just really another woman who is trying to do all the things in a way that pleases God. I have today with me a guest, Anna Kettle, who I'm excited to talk to with today and just to share with you the story that God has put on her heart. So welcome, Anna. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks so much for having me, Marva. It's so great to be here.
Yes, and as viewers and listeners can probably tell, Anna is British. She's over in the UK. Anna, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone else?
Sure, yeah, so my name's Anna Kettle, and yes, I am British, you can tell by the accent. I'm from Liverpool, which is in just the north end of England. I'm a marketing manager by trade, so marketing professional, and I'm also a writer. And earlier this year, I just published my first book, which is called Stand Between Your Toes, Inspirations for a Slower, Simpler and More Soulful Life. So a bit of a long title there, but you get the gist of what it's about as well. And yeah, that just came out this spring, so I'm excited to kind of be here and talk about it a bit today.
I'm excited about it as well. You know, Anna, I'm in the Caribbean and there's a lot of sand. So
I
when
love that.
about sand between your toes, I think about that, just being on a beach, laying out on a beach, relaxing and just soaking up the sun and having that view of the ocean. It sounds very inviting. And I suspect that that's what your book is about, a sort of an invitation. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you're right, it kind of is. And I'm also based on a coastline as well, so I live very close to the beach, albeit that it's a British one, so it's probably not quite as nice and sunny as the Caribbean type. But anyway, yeah, the book is kind of an invitation. It's an invitation into experiencing more of God's rest in your everyday life. So I wrote it a few years ago. When I first became a mum. I had my little boy then, and it was really when I went back to work after having him. As I said, I work in a marketing profession and I'm in a pretty busy job. And so when I went back to work, I was suddenly like in the space where I was having to juggle being a good mother and also full-time work and just all the other usual life pressures that we all live with. I'm sure, you know, that juggle is so familiar to all of your viewers. But yeah, I was really sort of wrestling with that in that season. Like, how do I balance everything and how do I live in God's rest rather than this sense of hurry and stress and feeling like I'm juggling too many balls all the time and always like just, you know, that close to dropping something important and just always feeling quite anxious and just not being the best version of myself, you know, stressed and snappy with my family and that kind of thing because I'm under pressure and just kind of looking for a better way. So that's really what the book grew out of. I started blogging a lot on the issue and sort of just really digging into scripture and sort of saying, God, you know, how do I find rest in my everyday life? And so that's what the book is. It's kind of, it was initially a series of blogs and it's been turned into a book of devotionals. And basically it's every day there's like a verse that's all about resting in God, finding peace in God, that kind of theme. And so it's like a kind of my reflection on a Bible verse, and then it's kind of also a little bit of kind of some practical tips or an idea that you could take away and sort of try yourself, and also a prayer. So it's kind of really simple and it's actually quite bite-sized because it's designed for busy women like you and I. So that's what the book is, and yeah, it's absolutely an invitation into rest, and it's not an invitation in like, well, I've learned all about this now and I know what I'm doing, so here's how. It's more of an invitation to learn together. So I'm very much like, as a writer, I'm very much a learner on the journey still as well. It's like part of my wrestling with it. And, you know, I'm not naturally someone who finds this easy. I'm a busy person. I'm a driven kind of personality. I'm like an Enneagram 3, which is the achiever. I'm like, you know, the sort of type A, classic type A personality. I'm not someone who naturally slows down and finds resting easy, but it's something I've been moving towards because I've just realised more and more the need for it, and that actually always running at 100% is just not a sustainable way of life. It wasn't really before I had a family, and since becoming a mother, it's like doubly not sustainable. And so, yeah, that's kind of the invitation. It's like, come with me on this journey and let's learn how to do this together, and let's explore some of the ways we can live in God's rest every day. So, yeah.
I appreciate that you've said that, you know, you're on this journey with us. You've learned some lessons along the way and you're willing to share them. That's so important. And I find that recently, you know, given the pandemic throughout the world and so on, many of us have been forced, if you will, to slow down and to rest and to kind of look at our lives in a different way. But as many countries start to open back up and we get back into what can seem like a little bit more normal way of living, I sense that we're rushing back into the way our lives used to be. So what words of advice would you have for us, Anna, as to how we can slow the pace? And maybe the lessons that you might have taken away from the pandemic as well, from slowing down. What words of advice would you have for us?
Yeah, I think you're really right. And it's a really key season right now, isn't it? Because it's one thing to be forced into a season of slowing down, which a lot of people have, although I also acknowledge that a lot of my working mum friends have continued to be busy, and actually they've been doubly busy because they've been working at home and they've been juggling children at home, not in school, you know, quite a lot the past year. So it's been like double pressure. There's somebody trying to homeschool and work, perhaps. I know that I had that for a season last summer. Thankfully, then our schools reopened. But yeah, for me, this season now, where things start to reopen, is really crucial, because actually, you're right, and I can already see it in friends and family around me, and particularly non-Christian friends and work colleagues, that are all just rushing back to like life as it used to be. Like, oh, thank goodness that's over. Let's get back to it. And actually, maybe it's doubly so because there's this pressure to kind of make up for a whole year where we've not been able to see each other and we've not been able to do certain things. So now it's like, quick, let's do all the things this summer. And yeah, and I think it could be a bit of a culture shock for a lot of people. But I feel like right now in this season, it's a real choice. Like, there's a real sense of choice. You know, we get to choose how much we take back on. And I think what's happened with this pandemic is a once-in-a-lifetime situation. Well, we hope it's a once-in-a-lifetime situation. But, you know, it's really unusual to actually be able to take a year where you get off a bit of that wheel. Like, I know for me, I'm used to commuting, to having my little boy in school and then picking him up and having him in before school club and after school club, and then at the end of the day, scooping him up and then doing all the evening stuff, you know, tea time and rushing through bath time and all the things. And this year has been amazing to like have him at home more, and to not actually have that hour commute into the office every day, and to actually have a slower start in the morning where I can have a bit more pause before I get into work, and yeah, be around a bit more after school and all of those things. So for me, I want to maintain some of that. And even as life opens up back to normal, it's like, I feel like rest is a real choice that we have to make. So we can't choose what our employers say about going back to work, but there's certainly a lot of other things we get to choose about how we spend our spare time and how much stuff we diary in, and whether we fill every moment with activity, or we, just really go into it intentionally and think about what are the priorities. And I think prioritization is really key for me. I think, I think it's so easy to just always be wanting to do all the things and all the things at once. And actually, I think wisdom is in knowing what the right things are and what the right things are for this season. And because there's lots of good things you can do with your life, aren't there? There's so many good things that you could do, but it doesn't mean that they're all things that God's calling you to do, or God's calling you to do in this season. So I think clarity about what the priorities are and what God's purpose for you in each season of your life that's really key for me. And I think it's a really helpful practice every few months to just be like, God, what are the priorities right now? And to actually have that conversation. Because I think otherwise the temptation, particularly for a doer like I am, is to just say yes, yes, yes to everything, and suddenly you're overwhelmed and you think, why did I take on all this stuff? I don't even want to do half of it. And there's this scripture in Ephesians 5:16, I mention it in the book actually, and it talks about making most of every day, because making most of every opportunity because the days are evil. And I used to always interpret that as like, oh, that means like do all the things, and make the most of every opportunity means do everything. You know, that's kind of how I used to interpret it. But actually, if you read on, it says understanding what the Lord's will is. And that's it, that's the prioritization part. And it's so easy to miss. It's like, you know, and it actually says don't be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. And that's how you avoid the busyness of our culture. And you know, it's, yeah, I feel like the days are evil in terms of like hurry and busyness is such a symptom of our culture and our world at the moment. And yeah, that's wisdom, and that's how we make the most of every opportunity. We decipher and we have those conversations with God, and we choose to prioritize what's truly important, and then we say no to the other things.
Wow, Anna, so much good stuff in there. You know, as you shared that scripture in Ephesians where it talks about don't be foolish, I was like, oh. Because sometimes, yeah, I do want to rush out and do all the things. And I am, you know, I would admit I am a doer, and I want to do more and more, but you rightfully said there is a season. You know, some of these things are good things, but maybe not for the season that I'm in right now. Maybe it's just not the time. Maybe it's not even for me, right? So it's knowing where you are in your walk with God. It's knowing where, you know, what your life situation is. And as you said, that we have a choice. We can choose. There's so many things that we tend to take on. There's certain things that we have no choice in, that are given, you know, circumstances. Sometimes we don't have control over those things, but there's certain things that we do, and we get to choose. So that is really powerful. But Anna, I want to ask you, for the woman who feels like maybe she has made a mess of it already, you know, she's been trying to do all these things, manage work and life and family and the job and all these things, and maybe hasn't quite gotten it the way that she feels is even glorifying God, and she feels like she's just messed up. What do you say to her?
Well, firstly, I'd say, yeah, me too. I think we've all done that, haven't we? We're all still learning. I mean, I feel like this is a lifelong lesson. I don't think this is something that you suddenly turn around one day and say, well, I've got it 100% sorted now. I'll never fall into busyness again. I feel like I've learned a lot on this journey in the last few years, but I've got a lot more learning to do on it. And I think like a lot of things in life and in our walk with God, it's little by little, and there's a lot of grace from God in it. But yeah, I do feel like probably my best advice is to start small and to start with grace for yourself. So I always think of that scripture in Matthew 11:28. So it talks about the enforced rhythms of grace in the Message version, and Jesus is talking about living in his rest, and it's that passage where it's like, I won't give you anything heavy or ill-fitting, you know, watch me, look at how I do it, I'm paraphrasing here, and learn the enforced rhythms of grace, something like that. And that's it. Part of it is having grace for yourself and knowing that God's got grace for you when you mess it up, and that it's not perfect, and we are learning, and Jesus invites us. He invites us into that learning process to watch how he does it and to learn from him. But also, I think, just practically speaking, I'd say start small. So I think so often the problem with rest or work-life balance is that we think, oh, well, it's all or nothing. So sometimes I think, oh, you can only rest in terms of the big moments. So that annual holiday that we might take abroad for 2 weeks in the sunshine, you know, and right now, certainly in the UK, that's not possible because, you know, flights are still so restricted and travel's still not easy. So, you know, it's so easy to think, oh, well, rest is just those big holiday moments, or even those sort of weekly Sabbath rhythms that we're called to live in as Christians. But actually, what I'm learning is that rest is in the small moments too, and actually, that's a much easier place to start. you know, if you're not someone who finds a lot of time for like slowing down and pausing in your life, then start with the really small pauses. And like I run something on and off on social media called the small moments of pause. It's just encouraging women to take like 5 minutes here and there in their day just to sort of still themselves and be, and just to pause in the moment. So for me, I try and do it sort of 10-15 minutes before I start the day, you know, in the mornings, so that I'm starting my working day before I open the laptop or any emails or anything like that, that I start the day from a moment of pause. I take maybe 10 minutes, just 15 minutes, something like that, with a coffee in the morning, with my Bible open, maybe just being still before God or praying. And then, so I'm starting the day from a place of rest, not hurry and rush and panic about getting all the things done. You know, and then it might be that I take a 20-minute walk in my lunch break rather than pressing on and, you know, let's just get everything through, and getting out in nature and trying to get that headspace. But also more and more I'm sort of realizing that it's like between each activity, just taking a short 5-minute pause or 2-minute pause, even just a, you know, a tea break or a toilet break or whatever it is. Like actually that's, you know, the sort of the vibe of our day is like just cram more and more and more into every moment. But actually it's nonsense, because there's so many studies that have shown that the brain works better and that we function better as people and we're more productive when we take regular pauses and breaks, even if they're small. So, you know, I think studies recently done have shown that the maximum you can focus really on anything is 90 minutes. And I think that's a pretty focused person. I think probably my maximum is nearer to an hour, without needing a break. And so I try and have a small break once every hour in a working day. It might just be to walk around the house and just change the pace. And I particularly try and do it when I'm between one task to another. So perhaps if I finished one Zoom meeting, I might take a 2-minute break and walk around and stretch my legs, do something different, get a change of scene before I go straight on to the next thing or back into my emails or onto the next task. And I think when you break it down and think about rest in small moments of time as well as the big moments, it's a bit less overwhelming. Like I think sometimes when we start from, oh, well, how am I going to take a whole day off every week with Sabbath? If you're not doing that or you're struggling to find that, then start small and work up from there. And I think it all counts, doesn't it? And I think actually Jesus doesn't say just have rest once a week or just once a year. He says, live in my rest and find those unforced rhythms of grace all the time. And I think it's that thing of constantly living in a place of rest rather than working towards the rest. You know, it's like, just get everything done. And then finally, I'll take a break at the end of the day or at the end of the week. You know, if I can just get through everything, then I'll earn a rest. And actually, that's the point of faith, isn't it? We don't need to earn anything. He's already done it, and we can choose to rest and choose to be. I'm not saying we don't work at all, but it's how we work and it's the way we work. And we can work without working from a place of striving and stress and hurry and scarcity and feeling like there's not enough hours in the day and panic. And yeah, none of that stuff makes us more productive. It's so counterproductive. So.
Wow, yeah, those moments of rest, the small moments count. It's not about waiting for a big holiday or vacation. It's not about a weekly time of rest. It's building rest into your days, what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just it's starting really small and manageable. Like you don't have to do it all at once. Like anything, you know, the more you work those muscles, the better they get, but start small.
Yes. So start small and work those muscles. And before you know it, you'll be like, oh.
Yeah, that's the theory.
I know I heard you mention work-life balance, Anna. Can you tell us what work-life balance means to you and what does that look like?
Yeah, I think for me, it's something I'm still learning. I think I'm a lot better at it, and I think COVID has helped because I'm still working at home. And yeah, I as I said, I'm sort of around more in the day, and actually I have to do the school runs now after my little boy finishes school, and I have to drop him off in the morning, and there's no sort of wraparound school care. So yeah, I'm having to kind of figure this out more than I used to actually in sort of normal times, but I've really been enjoying it. And I I think sometimes it's about focus. It's interesting because I actually heard this on Emily P. Freeman's podcast a few weeks ago. She was talking to Megan Hyatt Miller. I don't know if you saw it, or heard it. Sorry, it's a podcast. But it was a really interesting conversation. So Megan Hyatt Miller, obviously from the Hyatt family, who big organisation, and her and her dad run the company basically. And she's a mother of, I think she has several children. She was talking about the work-life balance and how for years she was stressed about taking on more responsibility in her dad's company because she felt, although it was what she loved to do and wanted to do, she didn't think she could do it without compromising being a good mother. And she didn't want to not be there for her kids. And and she talked a lot about this idea of like, actually, it's not about working more hours or working all the time. It's about working smarter. And she actually said, like, it's possible to work like a more focused amount of time. So you work shorter hours in the day, and then in a really focused, like quite focused way, where you sort of really maximize your time and chunk time off and don't kind of have any distractions going on, and it's much more productive than working like from 8 in the morning till 8 at night and constantly being interrupted. So when I sort of translate that into my own life, it's things like, how do I do better work in a shorter amount of time? So, well, I need to stop multitasking and flitting from one thing to another. I need to stop being knocked off course from what I'm doing by opening emails that aren't actually important. So I need to prioritize the like important over the urgent. And also things like mobile phones and social media, just turning off notifications. And this is not just true in my working day, it's true in my whole life. Like things like having better boundaries with my phone and with social media has been a game changer for me. It's brought me back time in my life for sure. So where I might have been constantly interrupted by text messages or alerts coming through on Facebook or something or other, now I'm not getting that, and I just log in once a day and see what's come through that's important at the end of the day. And it means it takes more energy to keep kind of switching between one thing to another than it does to just stay on focus with one thing. And she's sort of talked about how she just has one point in the day, like a half-hour window in the morning where she deals with emails, and then she doesn't go back on them. And if anybody else needs her, they know that any one of her team needs it, they have to physically phone her if it's urgent. But that's the window where she responds to people, and she doesn't do it any other time. And I thought, that's a great idea, isn't it? Like, we can just be more effective with the time we've got and work smarter rather than harder. And she actually finishes the working day, even though she helps run this massive company, global company. She like finishes the day at 3:30, 4 o'clock and picks up her kids every day and doesn't turn the laptop back on usually, she was saying, for the rest of the day. And I think, wow, that's better than I've got it down right now. But that's what I'm working towards, that kind of model where I work smart, not work longer hours or work harder. And and so that's what work-life balance looks like for me. I think it's about, again, doing the right things and prioritizing the right things rather than just being distracted by lots of little things. And sort of streamlining your working day so that then the rest of your life works better too, I think. I mean, I know pre-pandemic there was a lot of hours in my workplace that were wasted with meetings that dragged on for too long and weren't focused, and meetings that were pointless because everyone just talked about everything but nothing ever got done. And I think everyone can relate to that in the workplace to a certain degree. And there's something about just quitting out and being a bit ruthless with some of the stuff that's just not focused and not purposeful, and really being people that live with intention and focus and purpose, both in our work, but then also in our family lives as well. And I think getting more out of both rather than sort of always flitting between lots of things and being permanently distracted wherever you are and not fully present anywhere. And I talk about those themes quite a lot in the book as well, and about being present and about being fully in the moment and fully focused on what's in front of you, whether that's your family or your work, but not spreading yourself thinly, because I think that's also where a lot of our mental overload and stress comes from. Yeah,
I love how we can learn from each other. As you share your experience and even what you've heard on the podcast with Emily P. Freeman and Megan Hyatt Miller as well, just learning from other women. We don't have to all make the same mistakes, right? We can learn from somebody else and see what they've done and give it a try in our own lives and tweak it where we need to and make it our own. But we don't have to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. So
definitely. And I love this idea of what you're doing, because it's about women sharing their experiences with other women, and that's how we learn, isn't it? It's like, let's get alongside each other as sisters and say, there's a better way to do this, and like, let's find it together. And that is very much what my book is about. It's like, here's some ideas and some things that I've tried, and some of them will work for you and some of them won't fit your life, and that's okay. But just take what is useful and implement it. Like, there's 100 different ideas for like slowing down in that book, or simplifying your life. There's one for each day, but yeah, not all 100 will work for every person's life, depending, you know, what's going on at any given time. But yeah, it's taking what works really well, even if there's just a few principles that are real game changers for you. It's like, yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's finding what's going to work well in your context and your season, and learning from different women who've done different things. And yeah, I think we've got a lot to give one another in this area. It's great.
it's probably best that we don't try to implement all 100 at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah. Otherwise, we're going to be busier than ever.
So good point there. So Anna, tell us, you know, you've gained a lot of wisdom over the years, and certainly by writing about rest and a slower way of living, you've gained some insights. If you were to look back and share some of these things with your younger self, say the Anna who was in her early 20s, you know, not yet married with kids and not all the career and all the busyness going on, what would you tell the younger Anna?
I think probably what I'd say is there's time. Like, I was thinking when we were talking before about that verse in Ecclesiastes that says there's time for everything under the sun. It's like, there's time for this, there's a time for that. You know, there's that whole passage where it's like there's a season and a time for everything. And I think this culture can make you so, I don't know, just hurried and feel like there's a race to the end, you know, that we have to do everything as fast as we can, that there's the scarcity, that we have to all hurry to the finish line and, you know, get to the top of our career and race to the top of, like, you know, whatever we're doing as quickly as possible, that we need to, you know, have the big house and make all the money and have career success and be great mums and get married and have 3 children by the time we're 30, you know, all by the time we're 30. And I think most women's experience is that you can't do it all well all at once, that it's bit by bit and brick by brick, and that's how you build a life. And yeah, I think what I'd say to myself is, if I went back in time, is like, take off the pressure and, like, yeah, just know that there's time for everything. You don't have to do it all today. That the seasons, like, there's other books that I'd like to write, there's other projects that I'd like to set up, you know, in the future. There's different things I'd like to do with my career that I've not had a chance to yet. And I'm, you know, I just hit 40 last year, and I think, oh, that's quite a key milestone, because I feel like probably hitting roughly the halfway point in life, maybe not quite, but near enough. Certainly done more than half of my adult life, probably, unless I live a really long life. And, you know, it's easy to feel like, oh, life is going so fast and there's not enough time to do all the things and be all the things I want to be. But actually, there's a lot of years ahead of us all still, you know, whether we're young, whether we're middle aged, whether we're getting older, there's still, you know, there's time for everything under the sun. And I feel like we need to sort of trust God and sort of just calm and, yeah, kind of quiet that sort of hurry sickness that we all live with, that there's this kind of race to do everything all in one day or 1 week or 1 year. And yeah, I think our culture really perpetuates that sense of, like, hurry, and if you don't get on it, you're being left behind. And I don't think that's true. I don't know if you've read the book Slowing Down by Jennifer Jukes-Lee. It just came out recently, but that's a really good read if people are interested in learning more about that kind of hurry sickness as well. Yeah, I just think that's what I'd told myself. Just, there's plenty of time. Just take it slow and steady, and you don't have to do it all at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen some good things being said about Jennifer's book, so that's definitely on my list. And
Yeah, it's a
it's
recommendation.
being able to slow down. You're right. This culture of ours, no matter where we live, I find, and certainly in a Western culture, there's a lot of hurry up and get what you're gonna get, and time is
Mm.
running out, and I don't know that any of that is true, because I
No.
believe that God gives us as much time as we're each going to have. And it's
Mm.
how we use it. It's how we use that time that he's given us. And it's, just really being able to trust him, as you said, Anna,
Mm.
because he has a plan for each of us. And if we're
Mm.
faithful with the time that he's given us, you know, he will work the things out and give us enough time to do the things that we need to get done. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate you sharing that, and just all the insights that you have shared with us today, and the hope that you've poured into me. I felt myself just breathing a little bit more slowly and just really soaking it all up, because I too need to slow down and savor this time that God has given us, and the time that he's
Mm.
allowed us to have, to be able to pour into others and to share our insights and our wisdom, and just really amazing. So Anna,
Mm.
how can people keep in touch with you if they want to continue this conversation and learn a little bit more? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so yeah, I'd love people to get in touch, or to kind of connect with me if they want to and they're interested. So I'm on, well, the best place to find me is my website, actually. So I'm at annakettle.com, which is probably the best place to find everything. So I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and various social feeds, but all those links are there on my website. So if you just go to annakettle.com, you can find wherever I am from there. And there's a bit of information about the book if you want to find out more about that too. People can download a few sample pages for free if they want to sort of try it out and see if it's a good fit for them before they buy it. Yeah, and I also have like a monthly email where I send out just some tips and ideas, so people can sign up for that. And there's a few other sort of resources on my website to help people sort of think about those things we've talked about, like small moments of pause. And yes, they're all free to download if you sort of head over to my website as well. But it's all kind of, all the information's there in one place. So
Yes.
yeah, please do get in touch.
And Anna has a rest test. So if you're wondering how much rest you're getting, on her website, there's that test, sort of a quiz you can take to kind of check in and see how you're doing in that area of your life. I think that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Anna, this was fantastic. Thank you so much. And just for taking the time to talk with us and to share some tips and insights from your own life and from your book. That book, Sand Between Your Toes, it's really something that I'm delving into now myself and enjoying it, Anna, I have to say, and really encourage anyone to pick up a copy and get some encouragement, get some inspiration of how to slow down and enjoy your life, the life that you have, the one life that you have. So continue to stay tuned to the YouTube channel here or anywhere else on social media on Marva T. Smith, or on my website, marvasmith.com, so that you can find out about future episodes. Until next time, continue to thrive. Bye-bye.